Welcome to the Xceptional Insights podcast. I'm Sean Wargo, and I'm joined by my colleague, Peter Hansen. Together, we make up the market intelligence team here at Avixa,
where it's our job to identify trends in the economy and understand how they affect our industry, the professional audiovisual industry.
Hello, this is Sean Wargo and Peter Hansen from Avixa. Welcome to the ISE Live podcast. We're here to riff a little bit about what we've seen at the show, what's hot, what our key takeaways are, and how that might change our outlook for Pro AV going into the next year, or into 2025 and the years beyond. So why don't we kick it off, Peter? Let's start with, what are the things that we saw at the show that really might have been a surprise or just kind of a call out in our key themes? We talked a lot about AI. We've talked a lot about new disruptive technologies. I'll start with you. What's your pick? What are you seeing out there?
Well, I think before I even start to talk tech, I got to talk people. I mean, what a vibrant show. I always love how ISE brings people from so many different parts of the world. And I think something we're going to talk to as we start to get into tech, also so many different industries. ISE really represents the broad circle of AV that in a way that, other shows that do, but maybe not to the same extent. And I think that, right now what we're recording right here, I can look across and just kind of sort of make out through the gaps, the esports area. It's bigger than ever. And it's really it's so cool that it's something that people attend the show just to see, almost not even from a learning perspective. And then across the way, you can sometimes hear it's the drone space.
Yeah.
And we can see what, outside of ISE, what companies have started to do with that in terms of visual, immersive, a wow factor. And then to see it here in a big way at ISE it's really exciting. So, I think people first. I think the big circle second of AV, of everything it can be. Yeah. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, I have to echo that first. So one of the things I love about ISE is it's probably the show where we get to see the true full extent of the Pro AV industry, whether it's kind of the IT components, collaboration, of course, at its core, education technologies, but you see the margins. You're seeing stuff like live events, which on the people side, on the space side, one of the cool things for me as a key takeaway, live events here in spades. That we knew that live events as a market was really hard hit by the pandemic. We saw minus 60, minus 70% declines in the revenues coming from that sector. So to see it here, occupying pretty much its own hall, taking up all the space with rental, lighting, staging, rigging, all that kind of stuff is just a great story for us as we look at the vibrancy and the return of growth to that sector. So I'm going to pick that as my first, is live events is back. We knew it was coming back. We knew that growth was strong there. But to see it now at the show really is a testament to, not only is it back from a audience engagement perspective, but it's now back as a buying, selling segment.
Yeah.
Too. So yeah, what's your?
Well, I think an important kind of point to add on and to build on the live event story is the kind of IOTA picture where we talk about revenue for it. And the attendance has been back for maybe almost as far back as 2023.
Yeah.
But it's really more of like a start of 2025 story where the AV spending has recovered to that pre-pandemic level. And the reason why it was a little delayed in terms of AV as compared to people is just the financial bloodbath, quite frankly, that these companies took, that they've really tried to kind of dig out of. And now in 2025 at ISE, you can see the proof that they're looking forward and investing in a way that they started to spend in 3 and 4, but in a more conservative way, in a more maybe bare minimum is a little too low, but the core basics. And now it's starting to be that arms race again, that really defined and made it one of the fastest growing categories pre-pandemic. It's about how you wow folks and how you take things to the next level to compete for the people who want to get into that experience economy.
Having supply certainly helps, right? I mean, it's another challenge over the last year, 2 years, right? So here at ISE, we certainly heard about that last year.
Yeah.
Now that's fairly corrected, so less of an issue, right?
Right. I mean, our kind of sense is 2024 was when it fully faded into the background. But that means that actually at the start of 2024, it was still a little bit present. And I think as well, maybe the market had it fully grokked that we didn't need to worry about it so much anymore, that we could really kind of put it in the rearview mirror. Now, that being said, we've heard a lot about tariffs in the last 3 weeks. And so there are a lot of concerns. It's less about, can I get my supplies, like we heard so sharply in 2022 and then kind of carried through. And it's more about, what is the pricing going to be?
Yes.
As well as, and that's both like a positive and negative. Like, it's like pricing, like, am I going to have to charge more? I'm going to be like honor prices that are in the contracts. Then it's also like, there's a little bit of concern here in Europe that, like, with the barriers going up, economists sometimes talk about a tariff as blockading your own ports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a tax to enter the country, and that's, it's to a real extent, that's what it is. So when the U.S. blockades its own ports, the product doesn't enter the U.S., it enters Europe, and you can kind of flood the market. And that tends to be a short-term equilibrium effect of price depression.
Mm-hmm.
So it adds a layer, and then there's also currency concerns. And then there's parts of the supply chain that go through the U.S., even to reach Europe. It's like U.S. doesn't have a lot of manufacturing, but some of the ways the supply chain is complexified over the past few years, and then, maybe it's manufactured in Mexico and it has to pass through the U.S. That's certainly the case with certain manufacturers. There's just a lot of noise and resultant concern there. So more of a cost, kind of like cost up, cost down concern than can I get what I need type concern. But there's still a little bit of that. Have you heard anything in particular?
Yeah. Well, so I know you're planning to focus. We do a quarterly report called our Meta Series, which is macroeconomic trends analysis. We make that available to our members. We're planning on focusing our Q1 report more extensively on tariffs and kind of how the market might respond to those. So certainly a concern out there, for sure. We hear that on the show floor. I think as I kind of look, though, at counterpoints, right? Where is there opportunity? Where is there excitement? Returning to live events, conversation about that being back, lots of energy, more show floor space allocated to it. An aspect of that is broadcast AV. So as part of events being back and engaging customers, we have a whole conference track here that was on AV broadcast technology. I point to that, and we did in IOTA as well, as kind of an area of outsized growth. And I think as you walk the show floor, you get even more feeling for the energy of that. Broadcast is also here. There's extensive amount of manufacturers kind of exhibiting. There's those around the edge on the traditional side that are thinking, how do I get into and harness some of this opportunity? But I think it's a nice extension off of that audience engagement, live events, experience economy side of things, which I know you focused some research on too, on the experience economy side. What's your take here at ISE in terms of what you're seeing there?
Yeah. Well, double clicking on AV for broadcast. I mean, that was really what, when we were talking about, what you've seen at ISE in terms of kind of like an application area, AV for broadcast was what really stood out for me. It's an area where the need has been, I think, relatively obvious or relatively clear to people in the industry for a number of years now. But I feel like 2025 is when it's really crystallized, when I think some of the language is kind of like consolidated around some terminology, some common language parts. I think when you started to see an inflection point about some like true broadcast exhibitors kind of showing up here, because, it's experience economy, but it's also, I think, a very like outside of the experience economy type need. Like, it's a corporate office need where it's, a company has a podcast, like Avixa has a few podcasts, and we need to have, it's not acceptable to have mediocre audio quality for a podcast if you want people to take it seriously. You want to have a video component typically, and that can't be iPhone level. And then,
right.
You start to have like get Maybe you want a couple of cameras to give like the close-up shot. It's then like you want the quality to be good, and then you start thinking about lighting, and then the level of expertise that needs to kind of be behind the camera to get that all right. And now you're really starting to get into that broadcast space. But it's also like an application or an end user need where it's someone in C-suite who's doing a town hall, right? And he doesn't want to, she doesn't want to look like just a normal person on a Zoom call. It's a key moment of connection to the employees, and you want to look better than you do on, even if you look at a decent USB camera or whatever, or decent PTZ camera, that's not as good as you can look. It's a far cry from what you have in broadcast. So all of a sudden you want to invest in a camera, you want to invest in lighting, you want to invest in that studio type space to look serious. And then I would say the third, I think, really critical corporate area that's really not experienced AV is when you have critical clients. You're talking about 6-7 figure contracts at the starting point, at the low end. Obviously these goes up through 8 and 9 and 10 figures. And if you're looking like just on a normal Teams Zoom setup for your conference room, like, does that give the impression of detail orientation, of technical competence, of I'm taking this seriously that you want? I mean, like, I think like this is maybe the extreme example, but like, think about the Steve Jobs keynotes for Apple every year. I mean, it was so, the effort that went into it, like, made it so serious. It was like, that was part of like, part of what made Apple amazing was like, they nail these. They're exciting. They're beautiful. They're modern. It's like, this company knows something that like maybe no other company quite does. And that created the buzz. That created the, frankly, some of like the consumer demand really flowed directly from that. And I think that a lot of companies are realizing that a broadcast level AV setup, or maybe not full on BBC, CNN, like it's not high 6-figure or 7-figure investment, but it's like well into 5-figure investment to have much better camera, much better lighting, and maybe, an AV employee who has a background in broadcast to really compose that to make you look way better than your competition looks.
Absolutely.
Or make you look just as good as your competition looks, because your competition does look that good.
Right. I think it's a testament to, or I think it's an extension off the fact that video is the medium of choice now. So many of our newer generations, they've grown up with that through YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of the different platforms. And so it's become the medium of choice. And therefore, it's a requirement for you to be able to tell your brand story effectively using that medium. So 100% agree. I think where the market is now, as we walk around the show floor and we look at the evolution of this story, it's in identifying the specific use cases that the customer might have, the end user, whether it's the corporate town hall or whether it's the corporate event or it's a customer engagement that I'm doing on a TikTok social platform or other. Finding those use cases and then determining the proper kit to equip the customer. Right, because it will run the full gamut from, say, a more simple scale, low end, microphones with camera that's easy to deploy, easy to use, all the way up to what might be full scale production, virtual production room, green screen, that kind of stuff at the corporate headquarters. What's interesting to me about this too, you and I have talked a lot about the office space and its utilization and hybrid work and all those sorts of things. A lot of corporates, enterprises now have, in a lot of cases, surplus space. So this is a great opportunity to be offering a chance to kit those spaces, to equip them then to do this creation of video content, engage their customer. We track this actually a little bit across our vertical markets through our quarterly demand study, and it has been interesting to see where it shows up. For example, retail. We know they've been competing with online for years. What we see among those end users is a strong interest in investing in AV production capability to be able to reach their customer. It would have been in the past more likely for them to invest in their showroom, but now it's about content creation. So clearly something happening here, an evolution, a extension of trend.
Yeah.
Our CMO has described it as an evolution in plain sight, or a development in plain sight. It's something that we had there for quite a while, but now is reaching another level.
Yeah.
Let's talk AI for a sec. So as you walk, you can't help but touch on the buzz phrase a little bit. As you walk around the show floor, what are you seeing? It's been a little bit hidden, but it's there nonetheless, right? So
yeah, something that I kind of note a little bit. I mean, a lot of people know it in maybe a broader context, is that Europe is not a leader in AI. Right? If we'll talk the broader context. Yeah, I'm the economist, so I do broader context. Mm-hmm. Think of the modern tech companies, like the big tech companies. Name the European one. Like, SAP is like a somewhat tech. Everybody is a tech company, and it's European. But really, the leaders are American, and now a little bit Chinese as well. And I think that when you see that start to filter through to Pro AV, now ISE is a completely vibrant show, and there's no lack of technological vibrancy, competence, innovation here. But I think some of the most leading edge technologies, there's a certain maybe skepticism or a slight disconnect in Europe and at ISE as compared to the US. And I would just kind of like call out and speak to our, attendees here. I've even heard speakers like, talking about AI and hearing falsehoods, like, misunderstandings of what AI is, what kind of the background of AI is, how it works. Maybe it's, I think, some discouragement to use AI because of these misunderstandings. It just makes me go like, this is one of the most transformative technologies. This is the most transformative technology that's out there right now. It's the most transformative technology since the internet and possibly since electricity. And it's not the most transformative like today in 2025, but in terms of the next decade and the extent to which you use it and bring it into your ecosystem and bring it into your tool set is going to be a very significant part, the extent to which you are one of the leaders in 2035 or one of the losers by that point. And I'll just something that came out in the news while we've been at ISE from a different sector was that an American company called Workday laid off just under 10% of the workforce, 1,700 workers, in order to invest in AI. And they got a 6% bump in the market as soon as they did that. And that really speaks to kind of like Wall Street's understanding of where the future is going. And it's not to say you need to lay off workers or that's not a necessary step, right? But it's like you have to take this seriously because that is the way the future is going. And that's the way that's going to drive your investment and drive your success long term. I see it on the show floor and I hear it spoken, but I think it's not to the extent that it should be yet. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree there. I think that some of it may be, too, that AI is an enabling technology. It's transformative, all the things you're saying. And so it may not... The challenge with the show floor as a representation of AI is show floor, booth space, it's dedicated to feature set, specification, use case. AI may be buzz phrase thrown in to kind of show how it's incorporated to augment, enhance one of those feature sets. But by itself, it's not necessarily the feature set, right? So more important, I think, as you're kind of talking about, is the story behind the company and how it may be utilizing AI as a transformative engine for its workflow, its productivity, its innovation, that sort of stuff. So while I definitely agree, clearly something that will impact the business, I think for right now, because it is more of that transformative agent behind the scenes, it may be less visible, even though it's being widely talked about. The other is, in some cases, because it is the most cutting edge, there's a competitive aspect too, where you may not yet be ready to signal to your competition exactly how you're deploying this technology because it's secret sauce. It's a little bit of that differentiator. So there are plenty of technologies at trade shows that are often shown behind closed doors. It's entirely possible that there's more being said here. But clearly, does that mean it's being given enough real estate? Probably not. And I expect each show, you and I come to these shows, we kind of look for it. The spidey sense is up, trying to get the signal so we can measure where we are in that evolution. But clearly a key point for us to keep watching as we go forward. Any other areas for you? I think the next kind of is how this shapes the industry and what we see for growth. But want to make sure, is there anything else you're seeing out there?
Yeah, I think one thing that I appreciate some, and I think it's a little bit hard in the trade show medium, but I think some companies are doing a really nice job of it here, is that the technology itself is really not enough. And it's almost not even the majority of the answer for a lot of needs, especially when you're talking about experience economy, broadcast AV. You say you drop 6 figures, put a broadcast AV system in, but no one on the company knows how to use it, or, you put, like a high-end projector, plus, the hardware the IT backbone that needs like for content and for projection mapping. But if you don't have the story to tell with it, if you don't have, the person who knows how to create that, you don't have the outcomes that you need. And I think, some companies have really done a nice job of it's not some crazy new technology, but it's them thinking about how they can actually help their end users create something awesome with the technology that can really differentiate you. It can be difficult to price the model and like defend the IP of that, but if you can really drive your end user's success by saying, it's not just, you don't just get like the tech installed, but I'm going to hold your hand through getting it deployed in a way that works for you, so you're actually getting the usage out that you invested in. I think that's especially in experiential, and I think broadcast AV too specifically that we've spoken about, that's a really key part. And I think especially on the experiential side, the live events kind of room, you see that a bit more. I think broadcast AVs maybe hasn't cracked that nut quite to the same extent. But I think that's something that, we get really into the tech specs and into the comparative technologies as like hardware. But as application, I think sometimes you can be a little short at a trade show. It's not designed for the application the same way. But I also have I gotta give a lot of credit to a lot of people here because they take that seriously. They understand that pain point and they're making progress on it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a key ingredient of effective integration, right? It's understand the use case, deploy the technology, but then support after to make sure that they're getting the full ROI on that investment. Yeah, the worst case is a technology solution that sits and never is touched, never used by the end user. There's some stories circulating certainly here at the show around broadcast AV in that regard. So a quick take, as and I think we'll probably dedicate, as we run out of time today, we'll dedicate some more time to, all right, we're coming out of ISE. It's always easy to be just enthusiastic and gung-ho about the future of the industry as you come and hear the buzz. But just a quick take from you, how are we looking for 2025? Does it change meaningfully what you've seen here, your outlook for the coming year, as we were kind of expecting a better growth year in 25 than 4?
Man, you have so much fun at these shows. The energy is so high that it really makes you want to just say oh, it's going to be a great year. Get the animal spirits going.
Yeah.
I think I like to take a couple of weeks, get your feet back on the ground.
Yeah.
But I do think from what you see, I think it confirms some story, and I think especially experienced economy, like when you see the level that they're back and the investment that's going in. I think I've been a little bit reassured about tariffs. There's certainly a bunch of concerns, but I think companies know, or at least let's say they're in Europe. they're not too affected. So I think a lot of the world is feeling good about it. What stood out for you? How's it changing your perspective?
Yeah, I think the big concern for me is actually some oversupply in some areas. We've got a lot of product that's flowed into the European market on the display side. That's creating actually some price deflation. We've got some saturation effect on conference and collaboration technology, which makes total sense, right? That's where the buzz, that's where the growth was during the pandemic. So a lot of companies said, I got to be a part of this. I got to have product that helps enable hybrid work, remote work, all the things. So we got some issues to sort out. But I think as I look at some of the experience zones and experience centers that kind of installed XR, AR installations where customers can get engaged, that gives me a lot of optimism. So do we hit the growth rate that we thought? We may be a little bit short based upon some of the challenges, but I'm with you. I'm optimistic. I look forward to digesting a bit, getting my feet back on the ground or elevated for a little while to recover, but certainly optimistic about 25. Well, Peter, it's been a great show. Thanks for joining me today. This has been the Xceptional Insights podcast from ISE. Look forward to joining you guys next time as we explore the topics within AV. Thanks so much.